Go ahead.
All right. Hey, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is our virtual regular City Council meeting for November 2nd, 2020. It is now 8 p.m. I would like at this time to call the meeting to order. If everyone could, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam City Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Mayor, we do have a quorum. The only council members that are not present at the moment is Councilmember Gardner and Mayor Pro Tem Boafo.
All right, thank you. At this time, are there any agenda additions, deletions, or amendments? Again, asking if there are any additions, deletions, or amendments. Hearing none, we will move on. I am not aware, is there any citizen participation comments?
Yes, Mayor, we do. Councilmember Ndebumala, was that a hand raised for a question?
Yeah,
or?
it was for, I thought we were going to announcements. It can wait during the announcements.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we did receive one comment this evening for citizen participation, and this is from Matthew Goldstein. Council members and city residents, climate warming threatens ecological stability. We can strengthen ecological resiliency by building a native plant network. 2 East Coast states, New Jersey and North Carolina, have implemented laws requiring and strongly favoring, respectively, their Department of Transportation to use native plants. Every municipality and state that maintains vegetation has a pivotal role in developing and promoting native plant networks. Ecologists, wildlife biologists, and entomologists have found that native plant species are more favorable to supporting local wildlife, including pollinating insects such as bees and butterflies, amphibians, and mammals. They feed the creatures at the bottom of the food hierarchy and then provide meals for creatures on the next rungs of the food ladder, such as birds and amphibians in our yards. They tend to be more adapted to local growing conditions and require fewer inputs, such as fertilizer and water, for successful establishment. Please consider adding a provision to the city code that either requires or asserts a strong preference for the city to purchase native plants. Attached is a modified copy of a bill currently being considered by the city of Mount Rainier to encourage residents and businesses to use native plants on their property. The goal is to establish continuous networks of native habitat within and across municipalities and states. Thank you. And that is it, Mayor.
Hey, and thank you for those comments. At this time, are there any presentations? I am not aware of any. City Clerk?
No, sir.
Anything from the city boards and committees?
Not at this meeting, no, sir.
Okay. And I will move to council announcements. I know Councilwoman Ndebumala had her hands raised, so please go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to make a quick announcement on behalf of Mayor Pro Tem Boafo, who wishes he could be with us this evening, but is unable to due to his obligations to tomorrow's election. So he and all of the rest of the council members would like to encourage you to make sure that you vote tomorrow if you haven't. It's a very big priority, so please make sure that you exercise your right and make sure that you go out to the polling locations and vote tomorrow. And if anyone needs any more information on where those polling locations are, please see the City of Bowie website, but you do know those locations are Bowie State, South Bowie Community Center, the Bowie Gymnasiums, and any others that I might be blanking on, but I think those are the main ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I know one of the things that we will be talking about is the drive-through flu shots, and I believe Councilwoman Harrison may have some comments on that.
We are still working on providing that. I will get with Councilmember Gardner to get additional information.
Okay.
Yep.
I think as it stands now, there may be some drive-through flu shots on Saturday.
Drives. Food drives.
The food drives, I'm sorry. The food drives. Remember, the food drives are continuing. I think we may have one or two left. I'd like to thank everybody who's been turning out, but also in supporting that. So thank you so very, very much for that. Any other council members with any announcements? If not, we will move on to the city manager's report. Any report from the city manager this evening?
Mr. Mayor, no, I have no report, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will now move on to the consent agenda. We have two items on the consent agenda: the approval of Proclamation P1320, which is proclaiming the month of November as Municipal Government Works Month in Bowie, and approval of Proclamation P1420. I would like to take the personal privilege of reading that one, if I can, at this time. Proclamation of the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland, observing Veterans Day, November 11th, 2020. Whereas in 1918, on the 11th hour of the 11th day in the 11th month, the war to end all wars was over, and whereas on November 11th, 1919, President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed that the reflections of Armistice Day be filled with solemn pride and gratitude, and whereas in 1954, President Eisenhower signed legislation designating November 11th as Veterans Day, through which a general nation may pay proper homage to all its veterans, and whereas every November 11th, the veterans organizations of Bowie gather with their fellow citizens to recognize the service of all veterans to the United States of America. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland, does hereby honor all those men and women who have bravely and proudly served their country as members of the armed forces of the United States of America, as well as all gather on this 11th day of the 11th month. Introduced and passed by the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland, at a regular meeting on November 2nd, 2020. Of course, that's assuming it is passed. So at this time,
I'd like to make a motion to approve. Make a motion to approve.
It's been moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. It's been moved and properly seconded that we accept the consent agenda as is. All in favor, respond by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same favor. Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to new business. And at this point, I will turn it over to city staff regarding the city development policies.
I'm sorry, Mayor, we will have old business. There's the Hall Station annexation.
That's all right, I skipped right over that. All right, again, old business, the Hall Station annexation. In that, we have the documents and the staff is seeking direction from the council on whether to proceed with the submitted annexation petition with an amended area to eliminate an unincorporated pocket. With that, the city staff has made this recommendation, and I will turn it over to city staff for their comments.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, the city received a petition for annexation for Hall Station. Council has discussed it at 2 prior meetings this past summer, and one of the things that was requested was to hold a town hall with the residents of the area to answer their questions and get some feedback from the people that were living in the area, generally in support of or not in support of the annexation. We did hold the town hall on the 21st of October. It was well attended, about 25 participants in the town hall. We had a lot of questions in regards to the annexation, what it meant in regards to taxes, process, services that are offered. We did not get any comments that were strictly in favor or strictly against the annexation itself, but all in all, the participants seemed to be very engaged and very interested in the annexation. Councilmember Ndebumadu did participate as well, and had an opportunity to hear firsthand from all of the participants at the meeting. So as you had mentioned, what staff is looking for is really a recommendation in regards to how to proceed. The annexation petition that was submitted does have an issue associated with it in that it creates an unincorporated pocket, which is not allowed to be able to proceed forward with an unincorporated pocket, which would not be in conformance with state law. So what staff is proposing to do is to amend the boundary of the annexation petition that has been submitted, to work towards that, to have the boundary come out to 301, which would create a nice logical boundary. And we're really looking for direction from the council on whether to proceed with that and move forward with preparing the legislation and associated public hearings and notice requirements for the consideration of the annexation. So that's what I have for you this evening.
Thank you so very much, Assistant City Manager. At this time, I will open the discussion up for any questions, and I will start off with our Council Member at Large, Ingrid Harrison.
First, I'd really like to hear from Councilmember Ndebumadu in regards to her comments on this, since it's in her district. However, I would like to express my support for the annexation project. So please, I've talked to several residents who are residents of those particular condos, and they are in favor of the annexation.
Councilwoman Ndebumadu, if you would take the lead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilwoman Harrison. First off, I want to thank staff for all the work that they've done, especially Joe Minor, as well as our assistant city manager and our city manager for all the work that went into this particular discussion and this agenda item. As most of you all know, we've been talking about this for a couple months now. The petition was brought forward by one of the residents, or two of the residents actually, who were very interested in making sure that Hall Station had the opportunity to be annexed into the city of Bowie. So for the last couple of months, we have proceeded in terms of discussing this on the agenda, as well as what the assistant city manager mentioned. Assistant city manager Mears mentioned that we did hold the town hall, which was really well attended, about 27 participants. They asked a lot of questions. We didn't hear at that time anyone publicly or vocally object to annexing Hall Station in. So it was a very productive meeting. We did a very great job breaking down, kind of the property value assessment or tax and answering all the questions that they had. So it was very productive. I am prepared to recommend to staff to, move forward on this endeavor. I think we have talked about it for a couple of months. I've spoken to a number of residents in Hall Station who are in favor of this annexation. I have not received not one email stating that anybody is opposed to this annexation. So I think we've had 4 months for people to voice their concerns if they were opposed. No one has come forward. We've even provided all of the email addresses of all of the council members during that town hall meeting so that if anybody is opposed, that they can send us an email. We haven't heard anything. Staff also did send out a letter to all of the residents in that neighborhood. We also did not hear anybody oppose this annexation. So I am prepared when the time is right, after hearing from all of my colleagues, to recommend that staff move forward with their recommendation, excluding that one pocket of unincorporated area. Mr. Mayor, you're on mute.
Thank you. Moving on to Councilmember Estev in District 1.
Hi, no questions. I think the staff report was very thorough, and I'm really glad that Councilmember Ndebumadu participated, and it sounds like everything's good.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Dufour.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Oh, this is Councilmember Gardner.
Oh, welcome, Councilmember Gardner. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I will go to Councilmember Dufour, and then I will recognize you, Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, thank you.
Good evening, and again, thanks to all the staff for all the good work that you've done putting this together and the patience working through this. My only concern appears not to be one at all, given the legwork that you've done, which is making sure that we don't have a situation where we have people who get annexed in who don't want to be. And I believe, do we know what the affirmative numbers are in terms of the petitions? How far up on the scale we went?
The petitions that we received were just over the minimum number required for consideration of the annexation. But as we go through this process, there is a lot of public notice that is required per state law that we have to follow in regards to letting people know. We have public hearings that are associated with this. We also have to provide notice to Prince George's County and the state of Maryland. So there's a lot of additional notice that's just as part of the process of reviewing the annexation legislation itself. So there will be ample time for anybody else to make comment if they have not had an opportunity to this point.
Wonderful. That takes care of my concerns. So thank you very much. Look forward to seeing the process move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Recognizing now Councilmember at Large Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to start by thanking staff for all of their involvement in this process as well. And Councilwoman Ndebumadu, I am definitely in favor of this annexation, but I want to also agree with Councilmember Wolfrey, is that we definitely want to be certain that prior to any final decisions are done, that we do have more engagement from the community, because we've had some instances in the past where residents or communities had been annexed and residents were not either informed, aware, or were indifferent for one reason or the other. So we definitely want to move cautiously, but being optimistic that it will be a great fit for the overall city. I'm always in favor of increasing and growing our tax base and bringing in more revenue to the city of Bowie, while certain communities such as Hall Station are very modern, very convenient community residents do believe that they are a part of the city of Bowie. So I guess I would welcome this project. I do say that we should, again, be cautious and making certain that not only we meet that threshold of the percentage of residents who are in favor of it, but it would be great if we would see even a larger percentage, so that the residents are, one, aware and comfortable with the shift and management of their community. But thank you all again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Harrison, was there anything else you wanted to add?
No,
Okay.
sir.
At this time, I'll simply say, I think I'll echo what everyone else has done, and that's thank staff. I think they did a great job. Councilwoman Ndebumadu, I thank you for the time and effort that you put in with the residents there. I think we all agree we want to make sure that we do something that all of the residents in general, as a majority, want to be a part of. And we know that being a part of the city of Bowie is something that is extremely positive. And so, having said that, I will, at this point, I believe if we would like, entertain a motion to direct staff to move forward.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to move forward with the Hall Station annexation and accept their recommendations on how we move forward.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly discussed. Second, any discussion? If not, call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. And now I think I was just really looking ahead to the new business because, as I said earlier to Joe Minor, there's a lot to unpack in that city development policies. So at this time, I'll turn it over to him. Joe?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council members. I'm Joe Minert, the City Planning Director, and tonight's agenda item is a continuation of the discussion that we started a month or so ago regarding the City Council's development review policies. Tonight's agenda item deals with the housing, historic, and urban design policies, as well as public facilities policies. What I'd like to do also is to just remind you that we provided in the memo to you for this evening's meeting the summary of the comments that we've received from council members to date. And so there are a number of items there that I picked up from the previous meetings and wanted to list them there for you so we can talk about those items as well further on into the meeting. So at this time, I'd like to put up on the screen the existing policy document, which starts with the housing policies. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Housing and neighborhoods. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the housing and neighborhoods section of the development policies that council has. And a lot of these policies are general in nature. The first one is pretty much a broad statement of policy about enhancing the residential character of the city by maintaining a majority of the single family detached character, but also balancing it with a choice of housing types and styles, including live-work dwelling units, housing for residents of all ages and incomes, and for populations with special needs or disabilities. So it's a pretty broad policy that the council has here. But again, the emphasis on protecting that single family detached character of the city. The second policy has to do with increasing opportunities for senior citizens and active adults, as well as persons with disabilities whenever that's possible. And we've relied on this policy to support various county council bills that have come through over the years that do broaden those opportunities. The third policy relates to the types and styles of dwelling units and trying to get builders to encourage things like one-story unit types or models that allow models that have the first floor master bedroom that allow for aging in place and addressing the needs of persons with disabilities. So that's been a policy that we use frequently when we review residential development residential development applications. The fourth policy had to do with the council being concerned about special exception applications, meaning types of uses that are non-residential in nature that are coming into some of the residential areas. And it's always been the council's policy to discourage those types of uses because they would disrupt the residential character of the city. Housing opportunities for moderately low and very low income families is referenced the city's consolidated housing plan that Mr. Buggs works on, This is something that's an emerging thing and that the city is getting more active in, and also distributing this housing throughout the city so it's not concentrated in one particular area. And then the sixth policy relates to one thing that came up recently with the Bowie Town Center Sears application, and that is that affordable housing and workforce type housing should be provided in all new residential development and redevelopment within the Bowie Local Center. And the Bowie Local Center is basically the town center and the Melford areas. So these are the residential policies that council has. They're broad in nature, as I mentioned. Like to move on to the next section of the document, which is community heritage, culture, and design. And this is basically looking at historic preservation and community preservation, as well as how the community is actually designed in terms of its macro and micro characteristics. So with regard to historic preservation, the City Council has always advocated that historic resources be preserved and rehabilitated. Where possible, that resources should be relocated rather than demolished. Also, that they should be surveyed for possible historic significance prior to any proposed demolition. Also, the council focused on the Huntington section of Old Town Bowie, considering it to be a historic resource wherever possible. Also, the working in Old Town Bowie with the county and the state to collaborate on an improvement plan that enhances the historic characteristics of Old Town Bowie. The historic view sheds, we talked about this in one of the previous sessions, especially related to the Jesuit property on Maryland Route 450, should be preserved and complemented by new development. That's wherever you have historic structures involved. And then council had said no historic designation either for a resource or a site should be implemented without the express consent of the property owner. And there's some history behind that one in terms of the last master plan, where Park and Planning was intending to set up a historic district in Old Town Bowie, and there were quite a few property owners who were not interested in having their property regulated through a historic district. And so council took the policy at that time that without the owner's consent, the city wouldn't support that. In terms of urban design, there are some long-standing policies that council has concerning the growth in the area and how the city grows, an intent to become more of a full-service city over time. Also, that zoning designations should set the actual limits related to the land use and not be used as a basis for negotiating higher densities. Number 3 is a step-down pattern of densities for residential development, with the highest densities for residential being limited to the area around the Bowie Town Center, or what we call the Bowie Local Center. And we had discussed in the last meeting, or at least one of the previous meetings, about the other activity centers throughout the planning area, which the previous policy of council has said that medium density would be acceptable in those areas. And as I understood your comments previously in these sessions, we really need to examine that and make sure that it's not higher density or medium density, that it's only low density in those areas, in addition to commercial and office type development. So that would be one policy that definitely would need to be revised. Number 4 relates to a pattern where the highest densities of commercial uses are concentrated within the Bowie Local Center, and that's pretty much what you see. In terms of existing land uses, we have the highest density or highest intensity office buildings and the retail within the Bowie Town Center and in the Melford area. Also, high quality pedestrian experiences that incorporates existing natural features and parks, as you see over at the Melford project. Number 5 is a long-standing policy just generally about the city continuing to pursue independent planning and zoning authority. So these policies are really setting forth how the city council wanted the city to grow into the future. There are a number of site-related urban design policies. This is basically how development lays out on the ground. The first one is that there should be a focus on a grid network. And when you look at this design of the Bowie Town Center, it's a great example of that, where you have streets that crisscross the main boulevard so that you can actually build onto those blocks and increase the character or the quality of the development in a type of Main Street design. So that's a policy that's been followed. Also at Melford with the main boulevard and everything. So that same principle was followed in Melford. These other policies relate to visual attractiveness within design so that preserving and being sensitive to the environment and adjacent land uses. There was a specific concern council had about the placement of monopoles and public utility towers, and that they should not be infringing on residential neighborhoods. Policy 4 there relates to streetscape design, and that's just a general policy being unified design and complementary to that of adjacent properties. Number 5 there deals with administrative review of architectural revisions, and that's sort of an internal guidance to staff, because typically once a project is through with a detailed site plan, there are usually new builders that come in or new models that are proposed. And so the council allowed the staff to actually do an administrative review and approval of those revisions when the HOA and the community have indicated its approval. Policy 6 there relates to landscaping the entrance features of developments and following some of the environmental techniques, such as the basecaping techniques with using native landscaping. Residential developments, number 7 there deals with what we call the CPTED, or crime prevention design through design, so that you are considering, as you review a development project, things like walls and dark spaces and things like that, so that you want to make sure that you design a project that has that respects the need for safety, public safety within the community that you're creating. So that's a general policy that council has set forth, and we review that on large projects. Policy number 8, mixed use buildings such as those with retail on the ground floor and office and housing up on the upper floors are encouraged. And we really haven't seen a lot of that, but that's something that we're hopeful that the Bowie Town Center would be able to do when it initially developed in the retail. But maybe at this second round with the Sears redevelopment, we might see something like that. And then number 9 deals with ancillary commercial uses. Those are the ones that support the residential communities, and council wanted to make sure that those were carefully planned as pedestrian scale neighborhood centers, such as the Mount Oak Plaza development there at Mount Oak and Mitchellville Roads. And then the final section of this review tonight involves public facilities policies. And this is a pretty wide-ranging section that deals with a lot of the infrastructure and types of things that support development. And so one of the big policies that council has had over the years is that development should be staged to coincide with the actual availability of the required public facilities, such as the schools, the roads, libraries, fires. And council is aware, the county council has established regulations over the years to deal with these public facilities. And you know, we talk a lot about schools, we talk a lot about roads, and the APF tests that go with those. Those are typically done during the preliminary plan of subdivision, and it really is a difficult thing to actually coordinate the availability of the public facilities at the time the development is opening. But it's all wrapped into the review process, and as the preliminary plans are approved, there are typically conditions put on that do affect the phasing of the project in conjunction with some of those improvements. So it is something that the county does through the APF review. Number 2, no project should be recommended for approval unless the adequate public facilities are either in place or will be constructed simultaneously. This is again an elaboration of policy 1. And then we focused on the latter years of the capital improvements program, because at some point in the past, the county was willing to accept as being sufficient funding in the out years of the capital program, which really is not a financial commitment to spend money. As council is aware, the budget year, which is the first year of the capital program, is when the real money is available. If funding is sitting in year 6 of the program and the county relies on that to approve developments over and over again, that project may never come to fruition because it's only planned money and not actual committed money. So the council's policy was really to stick to the funding in the first year of the capital program in order to be valid. Again, adequate public facilities concerns. This council did not want to accept fee in lieu as a method of satisfying adequate public facilities, that the actual facility should be built. But in some cases in the past, there have been things called road clubs where several developers have gotten together to pool their funds to actually implement the road improvements. And also the council was encouraging the concept of school clubs to similarly improve school facilities. And this is a pretty old policy, actually. And I think in some respects, the events have superseded us in terms of the way the county does its planning for schools and how those things are funded. The council did have a policy, and this continues to be your policy, that schools in excess of 100% of their design capacity should be deemed overcrowded. And that seems like a simple thing, but as you've been instructed in the past, the county does their calculations now on a school cluster basis, which is sort of a combination of multiple elementary, middle, and high schools within a certain geographic area of the county. And the design or the capacity figure that's used by the county is 105% of capacity. And as we know, the school facility surcharge is collected as development is approved. So it's not the situation that we were in, say, about 20 years ago when development was either delayed or there were conditions put on in terms of when the development could come online because some of the schools were over 100%. So the county found a way to allow development to continue while focusing their resources on the areas that really needed the improvements. The city council had at one point in time this policy number 5, which relates to major developers being asked to participate in the Partners with Education program. And this was a method of trying to get cooperation from developers in terms of supporting a local school, similar to how you see the neighborhood cleanups where you have a street that's cleaned up by a certain group and they adopt the street. This would be an example where developers would adopt a school and work with the school over time to help with not only their capital, but their operating costs. Policy 6 there relates to public improvements and the CIP being sized to anything that was constructed should not be used as a justification for increasing development beyond the adopted master plan. So if you had a major capital investment, say to improve a water line or a sewer line, that should not be used to initiate more development beyond the limits set by the master plan. We have number 7 there that relates to how developers prepare traffic studies, and the council was very interested in making sure that accident data and safety be addressed in those studies. And I believe those are being now addressed by the developers as they prepare their studies. It's now a typical step in that process where they'll request the accident data from the state and analyze that data. And you see those recommendations in some of the reports, the traffic reports that are submitted to supplement the development projects. And so we even point some of those things out in our staff reports. So that is being done. Policy 8 relates to the 10-year water and sewer plan, and again, not allowing amendments to the plan to be used to support a change in zoning. So if a project comes through and needs public water and sewer service, that they're able to get the water and sewer plan amended, but then it should not be used to turn around and rezone the property to a higher density. So that's been the council's policy. Number 9, council has always had this orientation about recreation facilities, that city-owned recreation facilities are in addition to and not a substitute for county facilities. So in other words, the county is still being expected to provide the level of recreation facilities in Bowie that they would provide anywhere else in the county, and that city facilities are above and beyond that. That's been the position of the council. Policy number 10 relates to developments providing recreation facilities, including smaller parks for younger children. So not just dedicating land, but actually providing some facilities for the community there, such as the pocket parks that you see, and also providing open space with parks and walks and gardens, natural exploration areas, and connections to the trails network. So it's a pretty broad policy. Another recreation facilities policy relates to providing trails and their access points and having those things completed and usable prior to the first occupancy permit being issued in a neighborhood, because we found that over time, as the neighborhoods become developed, it's harder to go in and install trails within a neighborhood if the community was not aware of them. So this policy was to encourage the staging of those facilities so that they came online at the same time as the occupancy of the units. Policy number 12 relates to development on homeowners association property, that those types of facilities should be of no less quality than what they would build if it were on a public property. And so the Park and Planning Commission does have standards for that, but this is something that the city wanted reassurance on, so that's thus we have the policy to protect the HOAs and make sure that they were getting the quality facilities on their open space parcels. Council was also interested in seeing opportunities for water-related recreation, including lakes and ponds and a water trail along the river. Also, number 14 relates to the area along the Patuxent River being a priority for acquisition, providing public access to the river and protecting habitat corridors and providing a linear trail network along the river for pedestrians and equestrians. And then that last policy there, number 15, relates to public-private partnerships. And this is something you've heard a lot about recently with the public school system in the county, allowing the public-private partnerships to provide an innovative way of financing public facilities. And so council has had this policy for years and would like to see things get done that way if it's possible. So that concludes the review of the policies, Mayor, and I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to talk about those things and any of the other items that were in the memo that we provided to you over the weekend. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, or if you have specific recommendations that you'd like to make for going forward. And I believe I explained it at the last meeting. Our approach would be to take all the feedback that we get from council to prepare a revised document, which we would then put out probably by the end of this month for public comment. We'd probably put it up for about 30 days and ask for public input. And we would then prepare a package for you that would have the draft amendment plus all of the comments received. And we would hold a public hearing sometime in early 2021 before you, and then take guidance from you as to what you would want to do at that point. So at this point, I'll close, Mayor, and I'd be happy to take any feedback or answer any questions you'd like to ask.
Okay, first and foremost, I'd like to say thank you, Joe, to you and all those who assisted you. I think you did an excellent job over the time we spent putting together all the comments and being able, as I said a little earlier, for you to be able to capture so much of that. I like your recommendation about taking those comments, putting them together and possibly putting them in a document that we can move forward for the citizens to review and ourselves as well as we move forward. At this time, though, I will start with our council members to see if they have any additional questions or comments of what's been presented at this point. And so I will start off with our council member at large, Ingrid Harrison.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There I am. Okay. Thank you so much, Joe. That was you've done a great job as always. I appreciate your very thorough and detailed explanation of everything. I do have one question in regards to affordable housing versus workforce housing, and you kind of made them sound interchangeable. So I wanted to find out if that's your thought process behind that, or could you delineate the difference between the two?
Well, the policy is really one that approaches all levels of housing, and that would include the low to moderate, and the moderate income housing. But workforce housing is more of a trend recently where, you know, it's focused on the teachers and the nurses and the firefighters and the people that make moderate incomes or above the median incomes. And so we're really talking about, I think it's 60 to 120% of the median would be considered workforce housing. So it's sort of a subcategory of the broader council policy, which addressed all levels of the incomes.
Okay, so you're saying that it's already included in that explanation?
Well, the policy literally does not currently say anything about workforce housing, but I think when we talk about the moderate income, I think it reads low to moderate income housing, housing for those groups, that workforce housing would be part of that moderate level, or at least some of it would. And so if council desires, we can amplify what we mean by workforce housing and add that to the policy. As I mentioned, that's kind of a recent trend, and I think some articulation would probably be very useful to us.
I would agree, and I'm hopeful that my colleagues agree as well, but I certainly would like to see a designation or just some more explanation on workforce housing and what our definition of that is.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I'll move on to Council Member at Large, Henry Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to first start by echoing the mayor's sentiments earlier that he made in reference to your report, Joe. Very good report, very informative. And I definitely want to agree as well with Councilwoman Harrison and getting a complete, clear understanding between workforce housing and affordable housing, simply because it's imperative that we know totally the total difference between the two, because it is of my opinion that we want to be certain that when housing is approved at different locations around the city, let's say, for instance, at the Bowie Town Center, it is of my opinion that we want to be careful to where we may not put affordable housing in an environment that would not be able to support the retail of a community. If we have workforce housing where the incomes are slightly higher, or where they are able to cover the cost of retail or contribute to a retail community such as the Bowie Town Center, I think we definitely, I have to agree with Councilwoman Harrison, that we definitely need to have a clear answer or understanding of the difference of the two, or if they are one of the same. So I want to thank you again, Joe, for the report, but I have to say I definitely would like to get more clarification on workforce housing and affordable housing.
Okay, I'll work with Mr. Buggs on that, because I know he has a lot of information in that regard.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Joe, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. I'll move on now to a council member from District 1, Michael Steph.
All set. Thank you so much, and I appreciate the presentation, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Move on to Council Member from District 2, DeFore Wolfley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate your time and effort on this as well. A couple quick questions for you. We spoke earlier about protecting the nature, the single-family nature, detached housing. Do we have anything specifically about the preservation of the nature of the Levitt areas?
Well, that was discussed at one of the previous meetings. In terms of land use, we had discussed that a neighborhood conservation zone would be one option for that. Generally protecting the character is the current policy. So there wasn't anything I covered tonight, but we did cover it at the previous meeting.
Is there a need to have it here, or you think it's good enough where we have it?
Well, I think it is more of an overriding policy. I mean, housing would be one place to think about placing that, but I think the land use is really the area where we've looked for this type of guidance from council, and it's mentioned, I think, in a couple of places under land use. I mean, I don't, it's really council's call. If you want something under housing, we could repeat the same policy. We've done that in the past with some certain things. So it's in there, but if council is interested in further amplifying that, I did mention as I went through it tonight, the idea of focusing on the single family character in the housing neighborhoods. That was something that council specifically asked for in the housing chapter. So it wouldn't be that difficult to take, for example, one of the policies that I covered tonight, which was, I think, that first policy under housing, which dealt with single-family detached and maintaining the majority of that throughout the community. We could say, for example, the Levitt areas, or even get even more specific, as we did in the land use chapter, concerning neighborhood conservation areas.
Excellent, that'd be nice. Another question for you was the section on landscaping at entrances. How many, if any, and this may not be something that you have off the top of your head, are actually on city property versus perhaps owned by homeowner association and the like?
Well, the majority of those entrance features that I'm aware of are HOA parcels. They're dedicated, set aside for the HOA on the record plat, and then the HOA maintains them.
Okay, thank you. That may be something that may be of interest looking down the road as to what we might want to do just for those parcels that are actually not covered by homeowners association. See if there's some way we could enhance those entrances as well. The other item I have as a question, which is on, I forget what section it was, but it was number 7, which was the safety issue, the review of safety as part of the design process. I know that that has been a significant problem in some places where the resulting structures ended up being problematic. I know that at the Bowen we've had some issues now and again. Is there anything that we could look to do to strengthen that? I'm not sure if it's a different review process or if there's a stronger policy on that. Obviously, I have a concern for our residents who are our future residents, but also I have a concern about the burden it puts on our law enforcement as well. And I'm thinking if there's something that we could do to strengthen that, that would be a good thing. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, the way the policy is written, I think we took it from the sort of the state of the art. This is, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's an acronym called CPTED, which is Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. I think that's what the number or what the letters stand for. So it's a crime prevention through design techniques. And this was a very popular thing that came out about 10 years ago. And the law enforcement community, I think, was really pushing for it. And so we were able to, because this is in the council's guidelines, we're able to bring it up in certain instances in development projects review and ask for more lighting or better lighting, or asking for protective fencing, elimination of dark corners, or providing more of a through street environment. So we're able to rely on this policy because it's written as broadly as it is, and we have relied on it in development cases. I think on large projects, for example, at Melford or in the Bowie Town Center, getting the input from the police department directly. I know that they're aware as we're going through reviews, and from time to time I'll hear from the chief on specific concerns. So I think it does happen in an ad hoc way where we get input from the police department. But this is really an urban design type of technique, which is really something that the site plan reviewer would be looking at, and the Bowie Advisory Planning Board would be looking at as an individual project is in front, an actual design is in front of them. So, I think the way it's written, it's pretty comprehensive, and it came from a source that, was the best source out there to describe what this is all about. And like I said, we can lean on that for just about anything. And the point is, when we're doing the review, that we actually stop and ask the question, does this particular site have any of these situations that might require a crime prevention approach to design? So I don't know if I'm answering your the question, but I think there's a whole rationale behind why it's written the way it is and what we've used it for.
I think you have, and I think perhaps my point is, I think we ought to take even more I think we ought to take an even stronger position on this than perhaps we have so far, in terms of being more dogmatic and perhaps putting some additional resources on it in terms of attention, so that we end up protecting kind of the future workload for our police, as well as protecting the future residents, whether it's having restricted access garages so that break and entry in cars disappears because you can't get in without a access pass or something like that. If that becomes part of the design, as opposed to a more loosely gated, maybe with just a what do you call it, a barricade or something like that that comes down like a toll or something like that, that's not very good at keeping people out. So I think if we had some more emphasis on that, I think perhaps maybe it's just in the execution phase that we ought to be spending a little bit more time. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. You've answered my questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. Moving on to Councilwoman Ndebumadu, District 4. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions at this time. I think Councilwoman Harrison and Councilman Gardner and Dufour have covered it all. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Joe, I think from my going through it is the few things I think that we really were looking at that I think my fellow council members looked at was, one, making sure we spell out a little more distinctly the affordable housing versus workforce housing, and making sure that way we can have a clear picture as to what we're talking about and what we're looking at in doing that. I think the other thing, and I think it was Council Member Wolfie was just saying, take a look and see when we're talking about enhancing and improving those entranceways, see if we can put in there to see about us being able to do it from a city standpoint versus just what's relied upon from the HOAs, and if we can do something with that. Again, I think you did a great job in talking about the city safety, i.e. the state-of-the-art work, being able to do see the septet and making sure we do that. I would like for us to consider as we go through the process, Joe, particularly yourself, and making sure that we mention it to our planning board that they ask those questions, that we make that something that they look at doing as a part of what they do when they're reviewing those, to make sure that they take a look at the septet and make sure that those questions are being asked. Because it is important that we do it from a standpoint of lighting, all the different things you said. And I guess last but not least in that is making sure, and I like your comment there, that as well as we can, get the police department to give, if not formally, informally, some input as well. So I think overall, again, thank you so very much for everything you've done with this. I think as a council, and I will put it to the council now, that we follow your direction. I believe that we can make these adjustments, put those in a document, prepare something that we can look at and we can give to the community, to the residents to take a look at and make a determination on. So again, thank you so very much. Joe, any other comments or questions you may have?
No, sir. I really appreciate the input and the feedback that you're all giving me in these sessions, and I look forward to preparing the document, and we'll put it out there and see what people want to say about it, and hopefully bring something back to you that you can then endorse, and then we can use in future years moving forward. So thank you for the cooperation.
Hey, thank you so very much, Joe. At this time, I think I would open it up if there was a motion to be able to have Joe move forward, direct city staff to put a document together with the comments we made tonight and the other comments, to put together a document that we can review, but as well put out for the public to review at this time. So I'm opening the floor. Would anyone like to move that?
Do we need a motion, or is it just a sense of the council? No. City manager says.
I think we may want to just do a motion and give them staff direction so that he can move forward.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor?
Thank you.
Please respond.
Aye.
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 Favor? Motion carries. Thank you again so very much, Joe.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Have a good evening.
You do the same. All right. Moving on to item B of the new business, and that's the Ice Arena Task Force discussion. And I think Congresswoman, I'm giving you promotion. Okay, look, I think Councilwoman at Large Harrison asked that this be put on the agenda, so I will defer to her at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it's not a long discussion. I just wanted to find out, and I know Mayor Pro Tem Boafo was hosted the first meeting of the task force, and he's not here, but I did want to kind of get an update on his thoughts on how that went. Also wanted to talk to you all about when we can designate co-chairs for that task force. And again, since he's not here to give us more of an update on what happened, unless someone else attended the meeting and could provide that, that'd be great. Perhaps we should wait until he's available to designate those co-chairs or provide some sort of recommendation. And that's up to you all.
I'm about to.
And also to provide more guidance on the purpose of the task force.
If I could jump in here real quick on that one.
Go ahead, Council Member Staff.
Yes, so Adrian just texted me. He may be trying to join remotely and not succeeding at the moment. But in any case, he let me know that the co-chairs appointments are expected to happen at the next meeting of the task force, that the task force members will be choosing their own leaders for the committee. So that's supposed to happen at their next meeting. I also personally had the opportunity to talk to several members of the task force about their first meeting. I read through the meeting notes. So far, they're happy with how things are going. Everything so far seems to be smooth sailing. But I just wanted to share that update that Councilmember Bravo let me know that they are selecting co-chairs at the next meeting. The first meeting was introductory, and all the members of the task force really had the opportunity to kind of go through, share their thoughts on kind of where things were right now, share their concerns, and that they're at the next meeting going to be appointing co-chairs and then putting out requests for information related to making repairs at the existing rink and looking at options. Adrian just asked me to share that.
Sounds good. That's exactly what I wanted to know. And I really wanted the public to understand kind of what's going on with that as well. So thank you very much.
No, absolutely. I'm glad we talked about it because I learned a thing or two as well. This was helpful to me.
Thank you, council members.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions at this point? If not, we can move on to adjournment of the meetings. First and foremost, again, thank you everyone for everything for tonight, city staff, everyone. We do appreciate all you do. I do want to say again, please, if you have not voted, please get out and vote. You know, it's not just the presidential election, but there are a lot of down ballot issues and questions on there that will affect all of us. So please make sure your vote counts and make sure you get out and vote if you haven't. I do want to commend us again, having reached the 70% mark. I know it was cut a little short with the census, but for the county, you know, we would have liked more, but I think Councilwoman Harrison and others have really been pushing. We're trying to get us all out there to make sure that we had done the census. So that was really a good job as a county getting to that 70%. So we hit that mark. Again, thank you to everyone. I will now entertain a motion. The council.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn to closed session and to adjourn to closed session under the statutory authority of the Maryland Annotated Code, State Government, Article Section 3, 305B3, to consider the acquisition of real property for a public purpose and matters directly related thereto.
I will second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right, been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. And again, staff, we appreciate all you do. And to the citizens, thank you for joining us this evening. Have a good evening. Good night, everyone. Please stay safe.